All right, I want to welcome everybody who's joined us today. My name is Dwayne King. I'm a Gold Affiliate member. And as always, we always start our calls with a disclaimer just so that we stay compliant. Anything we talk about on this call today, any of the products or services we talk about are not intended to treat, cure, mitigate any illness or disease, or that we act like they do. That in fact, we're not even anything we talk about, we're not talking about your health. Our programs and products are not about your health, but they're about your wellness. Now, when I talk it, I've had a passion for helping people in the fitness and wellness industry now for 50 years. I went into the health club business right out of college. I'm an exercise physiologist. I'm a certified personal knowledge trainer. I got involved with applied nutrition back in 1979 with a company called Shackley. You know, they were one of the leaders in the quote, all natural nutrition field. But something I've learned over 50 years, and I want to make sure that none of us use these terms. There's no such thing as an all natural organic nutritional supplement. Anybody that tells you our nutritional supplements are all natural, all organic. There's very little meaning of that in today's marketplace and supply. Science has grown so much since 1979, but our products are as natural as can be made according to science. And there's a lot of science that even in some cases, there's certain synthetic type products that are even more effective and longer shelf life than their natural components. I just want to make that clear. So Dwayne, you said this is not about our health, but about our wellness. What do you mean by that? Well, health is something that we're all born with. We spend our whole life slowly losing it. And in America, if you have a health issue, by law, you are required to go into the medical industry to get a diagnosis for it, and then to get a prescription for the cure for it. And we do nothing for your health. If you want to know if optimum daily nutrition, getting your diet up to optimum in every single category nutrition-wise, if that's going to be good for some particular health issue you have, you would need to go to your doctor and ask him, hey, doc, do you think good optimum nutrition every day would be beneficial and help me with this? And if he tells you no, I would recommend you change doctors. But what we're about is wellness. All the decisions we talk and train about when it comes to our products that you hear on Monday's call, they're not about your health, they're about wellness. Now, Dr. Goodkin can talk in some verbiage that I can't talk in. He can make certain statements about what things can affect your health in certain ways because he's a doctor. But wellness is about you, and it's about decisions that you make. And it's not just nutrition. It's about the air you breathe, the water you drink, the nutrition you consume. And these are the things I've been teaching over the last 50 years. And also was exercise, the physical fitness component in this. But one of the reasons I got out of the exercise, the physical end of wellness is because statistically, I knew that 90% of the people that start a program of exercise in America of any kind, doesn't matter, in 120 days, you have a 90% attrition factor. They're not active on it. So I know any group that I'm talking to, I just know that about 90% of them are not going to exercise on a regular basis, not consistently. So what we're talking about is the nutrition that you consume and what you can do to bring it up to optimum, what you can and what you're willing to do. But more than anything in today's marketplace is what you're financially able to do. And that's what I love about Live Good. It not only gives us, we can be willing, we can be able, and it gives us the financial ability to do it if we're willing to trade a little of our time for income. So what I want to talk about today is a disruption, and this disruption of a natural order. No matter whether you believe in Mother Nature, God, whatever your spiritual belief is, there's a natural order that was put into place. We hear all about this. We got to reduce our carbon footprint. We have a problem. We have too much pollution. Well, there outside, there's this natural order in place. All of that carbon sequestration is all designed to be handled through this photosynthesis where, God set it up. so that these trees could absorb all of this carbon dioxide through photosynthesis, these greenhouse gases, the stuff they're telling us is causing all this climate change. They can absorb it from the atmosphere, and then the way it's supposed to be is all these living live microbes that make our dirt soil. They draw this carbon from the plant, and then in exchange, it's a give and take. These microbes give back from the soil. They give back all of this nutrition that the plants need to thrive, to be able to give back good, healthy oxygen to our environment. They return good, healthy, clean air for us. But most important, it provided this organic, highly nutritious food that became available to us through this natural process. Well, something happened. First, we started polluting this environment. Now, this is not an attack on chemical companies. I want you to know that. Big Chemical is what let us win World War II. But there's somewhere between 8,500 and 13,000 chemical plants, depending on which number you want to look at, across American soil. And unfortunately, for every plus, there's also a negative. You know, here was a shell plant in Pennsylvania just this year was fined $10 million for exceeding pollution limits. How much did they exceed it? By 900%. And it's not just chemicals going in the air. These are chemicals that are going into the ground also. You know, immediately after World War II, we had this massive chemical industry, especially nitrogen production, that we had developed so we could create bombs to help us win World War II. Now we had this massive chemical nitrogen productive industry. What are we going to do with it? Well, the government decided, since we had poor soil coming out of the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl of back in the 20s, Americans were starving to death. I believe it was something like 140,000 young American men were turned away from the draft in World War II because they were undernourished. They had deficiency diseases. 140,000 men were turned away in America because they were nutritionally deficient. Our soil was deficient. So we started pouring these chemicals, especially nitrogen, into our farming soils, and we started trading off quality for quantity. Farmers are no longer paid for quality of their food. Well, there was a trade-off. All of these chemicals started killing off these microbes. If you don't have the microbes, you can't get this trade out for these nutrients that feed back to the trees. And the other thing we did, we started seeing this combination coming into the 50s and 60s, this triad that started developing where Big Pharma, Big Chemical, and Big Ag, literally the lines became blurred, so they all started becoming one. If you have not read this book, I recommend you get it. It's by Dr. Robert Lustig, and he wrote this book, Big Agriculture Feeds into Big Pharma. And he talks about this triad of Big Chemical, this chemicalization of our food supply through GMO of the plant, so that plants can now have all these different chemicals sprayed on them, herbicides, pesticides, and insecticides, and so that these plants would be impervious to these chemicals. These chemicals land on the soil, they kill off the microbes. The microbes are what provide the nutrition to the food. Well, in the processing, we're going to take the nutrition out anyway. So what we tend to do is we add back synthetic chemicals, so that now we've reached a point in America that we've cut down all our safety valves. So, this was a tree. When's the last time you saw a virgin pine tree that looked like this, Wayne Bailey? It's been a long time, probably never. This was back in the late 1800s. I remember going to a big pine slash forest deer hunting in Uriah, Alabama. And we went to the old home that was on this big, almost plantation. And there was a 10-foot pine tree that they had harvested from this virgin pine forest in Uriah, Alabama. Can you imagine a 10-foot diameter pine tree? Well, we've cut down all of the safety valves. And so that now this organic food that we used to grow is now ultra processed foods. You know, 50 years ago, when I got into this applied nutrition, we were teaching this class talking about processed food, processing that was taking place in the mill. Today, it takes place in the field with our GMO crops. And all these studies, all the statistics are starting to link these things together. This was the latest, most complete study that had been done to date on this link between ultra-processed foods and the link to cancer risk. This came out of the United Kingdom. You know, even today, though, they have to use words like may be linked to cancer. Well, you read the study, it's a pretty complete, I think it's like 40-page study. It's pretty absolute that these links are what is being linked directly to cancer. But it's not just cancer we're finding from these ultra-processed foods. We're finding now cognitive disorders. Foods like, they call it highly processed foods and brain health. And scientists are now finding links between anxiety, depression, cognitive decline. Well, let's look at what's happening in America. We see what? Prescription, turn your TV on. You're going to hear about Zoloft, Rexulti, Vraylar. It's dominating the airwaves today. Prescriptions for what? Depression and anxiety. And then what do we see? We see our nursing homes being filled up with early dementia, cognitive decline, Alzheimer's. And now we're finding out these all have direct link to our diet. We find they have direct links back to diabetes. Listen, folks, I don't tell you about what you should do. I tell you what I've studied and what I've tried to do over the last 50 years. Any of these things that you then want to identify with and add to your program is what I attempt to do. I try and show you what I think is best and draw these lines. But, you know, when we talk about these packaged foods, it's not just the foods themselves. We now have over 10,000 approved chemicals that we add to the food you and I consume in the grocery store today, from everything for preservatives to improving texture, improving color, to artificially color it. And many of these chemicals have direct links to things like cancer, nervous system harms, immune system harm, but they're there. And now we're finding out even the packages, the food we get our food in, have what are called these forever chemicals, these PFASs. 3M just settled a almost $11 billion lawsuit with the cities of America because of these PFASs, these forever chemicals that are in our drinking water. And that's an integral part of our daily nutritional diet is the water that we drink. And these chemicals actually are leaching into the food. And if you go to ewg.org, there's nothing you can do about this other than vote with your pocketbook. How do you do that? Well, if you go to ewg.org, you can look up on their site all the fast food restaurants that have done away with these PFAS packagings and find the ones that still are using it. And spend your dollars, at least if you're going to eat fast food, spend it with the ones that aren't wrapping your food in forever chemicals. Now, here's one that very few people even know about. All of these chemicals have now, a lot of them are what are called obesogens. How many have heard a friend of yours tell you, man, I've tried to lose weight, I've dieted, I've exercised, I just can't lose weight? Well, maybe it's not your fault. We're now finding out that there are chemicals in our food, and not just our food. It's in our pesticides, our tap water, it's in our personal care products, air fresheners you're plugging in around your house. It's in your drugs, your antibiotics. It's in microwave. Microwave popcorn is one of the worst offenders of it. It's in wood preservatives, plastic canned goods. You know those cash register receipts that are so slick you can barely sign your name on them? Well, it turns out they have these obesogen chemicals in them. And these chemicals make you fat. They get into your system. Your body stores these in the fat and helps draw fat. So it may not be your fault. So I tell you all of this to lead up to the fact why we need to supplement our diet. And it's not because we're not eating enough. It's not because you know, we don't have enough food. Look at this. How much food do we waste? You know, this month, or I mean, this year, we set a milestone in America. We set a record. Now, when I got into the health club business back in 1974, we would talk about 12 to 15% of the or the population of America was clinically obese, and somewhere between 20 to 25% were overweight. And so then we saw this fitness and wellness just explosion take place in America. Today, you can't throw a rock without finding a place that you can go exercise. 24-hour gyms, 24-hour fitness, a gym and yoga, workout every corner that you can go. Well, the benefit of that is this year, we now reached a milestone that over 40%, 42.8% of Americans are now clinically obese. 60% of the population is overweight. And we throw away more food in America than some countries eat in the course of a year. The world wastes about 2.5 billion tons of food every year. We discard more food than any other country in the world, over 60 million tons every single year. We are an overfat, overfed nation, and that's a problem. The average American today is consuming between 2,500 and 4,000 calories a day. And you think the FDA is there to protect you? Well, this is the most stunning quote ever by a Harvard professor. This is the ex-commissioner of the FDA. For 50 years now, I've said the FDA is like hiring the fox to oversee the chicken coop. Well, here's what he said to one of his classes after being the FDA commissioner. He says the FDA protects the big drug companies and is subsequently rewarded, and using the government's police powers, they attack those who threaten the big drug companies. The thing that bugs me is that people think that the FDA is protecting them. It isn't. What the FDA is doing and what the public thinks it's doing are as different as night and day. The FDA is there to protect what it says it is, a Food and Drug Agency. The FTC, Federal Trade Commission, it's there to protect trade, not you. The EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, is there to protect big chemicals. You know, when the EPA was first formed, we used to hear, those of you that are old enough, about the Superfund that was going to clean up all these toxic waste dumps around America. You never hear about the Superfund anymore. All the Superfund billions of dollars have been spent. And you know how many toxic waste dumps that it cleaned up, Darren Smith? How many do you think? 0. That's right, 0. It identified them all for us and cleaned up none of them. So the next thing is you got to learn about label reading. Madison Avenue, and back in the 80s, we reached a point in, I can't remember the exact year, when the packaging that food was in actually now costs more than the food that was in it. And if you're on this call today, there's a couple of things I want to point out to you. You're never going to learn it all. But if you eat it, I want you to go through your house when you get off this call, and I want you to look at every single thing you have there that's in a bag or a box. If it's in a bag or a box, if you look real closely on there, somewhere you're going to find these words: ingredients derived from a bioengineered source. What does that mean, Dwayne? That means it's man-made. Call them up. Call their 800 number that's on the box. Call their customer service, like I did my favorite cracker wheat thins, and say, hey, I'm curious. I see this bioengineered on here. What does that mean? Well, that means that it's man-made to make it better. That's what she said, her exact words. No, it's man-made to make it more quantity and more profitable. I want to point something out to you. This says no artificial flavors or colors. So if the whole product is artificial, I guess that would mean the colors are not artificial. So how can you have bioengineered source? Now, if we look at something else on this label, See, this big label says original. Wheat Thins have been my favorite cracker for as long as I can remember. Well, I can guarantee you this. The original Wheat Thin that I ate was not derived from bioengineered sources. Let me point something else out to you, the way that Madison Avenue works to mislead you. If you read this label, you're going to see it says 100% whole grain wheat. That's what your eye tells you, that this is made from 100% whole grain wheat. That's not what it tells you. Wheat Thins is the name of the product. If wheat is on the box, is on the label, by law, you have to have at least 10% wheat in the product. This says it's made from 100% whole grain. So by law, they would have to have at least 10% of 100% whole grain of some type. Doesn't have to be wheat. It says no artificial flavors or colors, but it's made from a bioengineered source. And here's the final thing I want you to look at on this label. Look over here under nutrition facts. Here's what I know about 100% whole grain. That 100% whole grain has 8 complete complex B vitamins in it, all in this balance that are designed by nature to be used the way your body and your Krebs cycle and that mitochondria. Look on this label. Darren, you see any B vitamins on that label? 0. I wonder why that is. Because they don't want you to know that they've stripped out 8 natural B vitamins that were bioengineered to be at a minimal amount anyway, because they're going to strip them out, and they've added back 4 synthetic ones. They don't even show it up on the label. So anyway, this is just a little bit about labeling and how it's now designed. And you know, when I first got into this industry, it was called minimum daily requirements. That was what you calculated, MDR. It said it has this percent. Now, today, they've changed it into percentage of daily value. So they've assigned a daily value, and then you have to take your calculator and you have to calculate percentages. Why did they do that? Well, they said because this was going to make it better for the American population. But what they knew that about 70% of the adult, 50 to 70% is functionally illiterate when it comes to math, and they could not do these calculations and make buying choices based on this nutrition label. That's exactly why they did this. Come back one day on this call, and I'm going to do you know what's in a Nabisco vanilla wafer? Anybody out there like Nabisco vanilla wafers? Well, I'll tell you, a Nabisco vanilla wafer no longer exists. They're called Nabisco Nilla wafers. Why? Because there's no vanilla in it. That's something they didn't advertise to you on TV. So here's what the result of all of this is. Now, in an overfed nation with the average American consuming over 3,000 calories per day, 92% of Americans have diet deficiencies. That's why I do what I do. Do I do it to make money? Absolutely. Then why did I run my health club? Because it was a business. But my passion was seeing people get results when they did the things that I helped educate them to do. We have 90% of Americans are deficient in potassium, 70% calcium, 80% vitamin E, 50% vitamin A, C, magnesium. You take a woman, if she's deficient in C, she's probably deficient in iron. We now know that vitamin C is a precursor to iron. We started realizing that women who were being diagnosed with iron deficiencies were actually deficient in vitamin C. So if you have a woman who's deficient in C, more than likely she's also deficient in iron. Now get this, 50% of Americans, this is why I'm so excited about our D3K2 product. That's why, you know, I asked Dr. Goodkin on the call today, what would be the base program you recommend for seniors? And D3K2, that's one of them. 50% of Americans are deficient in vitamin D, 90% of African Americans, and 70% of elderly people. What's elderly? Well, over 60 years old. But here's what it's ultimately led to. And these are not my statistics. This is directly from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. So these are the people that deal with people my age. When you reach 65, if I'm talking to a group of 10 people over the age of 65, I know that 80% of them have one chronic condition. I know that 68% have two or more. I know that 6 out of 10 of them have hypertension. I know that 5 out of 10 have high cholesterol. 3 out of 10 have arthritis. 3 out of 10 has ischemic or coronary heart disease. 3% have diabetes, and 8% have chronic kidney disease. Folks, I don't think that what we're doing is an optional program anymore. I think we've reached a point in America where this is mandatory. So, I thank Live Good for what they've done. We can approach this as a mission. If those of you, if you're on Saturday's call, I like what that girl talked about. And one of the terms she used was decision fatigue. Most of you on here I know, and I know you've made a decision to join us in this, but along the way, we're going to get decision fatigue. We've made a decision to do something, and then it gets complicated. And that's one of the reasons we launched this team call. So when decision fatigue falls in, you can come join us as a group, and hopefully we can reinstill some of that motivation and that mission direction, that we can make this a mission. Now, our goal is that you don't get disrupting the disruption. And so that's the goal of our program. And one of the persons that I wanted to talk to, let me end this right here. Let me stop my share. And I'm going to ask, let me make sure I've got her on here. Amy, if you can unmute.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you good. I met Amy, I guess it's been, about 2 months ago. And I've been a real a treat to be able to talk to Amy and bat ideas around. Amy just had her first gold breakout in her downline. She's probably going to have a second gold breakout. And I think you're planning on being gold before the end of the next month. Am I correct?
That is always the plan, yes.
Fantastic. Well, Amy, before we get into this, would you just share a little bit about yourself and your background? Take about a minute, let the people know who you are before we talk about what you're doing.
Oh, sure. I've been almost 90 days in Live Good now. It's the 30th, I guess, 90 days. But my background, I was an insurance rep. I did health and life insurance. I chose to become an independent broker because then as a single parent, I could work my schedule around raising my girls. I had a real passion to still be a mom first and then provide for my family. I got into network marketing kind of from an interesting point from being an insurance agent. Someone came to me with a company that did legal services, which I thought fit really well with my insurance, and built that and have been living on some of the residuals from that. Met some wonderful people along the way who I was able to contact and bring in to Live Good. So that's my team. They're just awesome people. It wasn't easy though. I have tried a few things along the way. I have to say I was very disappointed because I had approached one of my gold, in fact, my family, Joe and Marlene, and they were adamantly opposed. And I felt so bad because I thought, it was a bad fit. I understood that was a bad fit. And then Live Good kind of fell in my lap, and I had to go back. I had to apologize, and I had to sit there and say, you really, 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 really need to take a look at this. And I just pretty much pleaded with them because it was everything that Joe had wanted. No auto ships, no quotas, wonderful products, a lot of good things. And it was exactly what he had said and what he had complained about with some of the other companies and the way that they did business. So he was really attracted to that. But it took him a while. he did drag his feet a little bit, and that was definitely my fault. But other than that, I love this industry. I am still a beginner, learning as I go from the people that are around me that are doing so well. They always say, copy the right cat. So I've been watching as my team that have lots of experience in network marketing, what they're doing. I love to listen to you. And my sponsor, Paul Richards, has had some wonderful success in network marketing. Tim Miller has made himself so available. It's amazing. He's so transparent. But overall, I mean, I'm looking forward to this just being definitely my future legacy for my family.
Fantastic. Amy, I want to just go back to, and this is one of the reasons I wanted you shared perfectly the fact that you had approached, and folks, so you know, Joe Valley just broke out as gold. And yet when you approached him in the past, he had no interest whatsoever. So that would, you know, it would have been just natural not to go back to him, you know, and say, oh, he's not going to be interested. And so I think that's so important to those of you that are on board. Think about people you've approached in the past, maybe with another, listen, we've all been involved in some failed attempts along the way. So I'm real glad you shared that, because Joe's going to be on with us next week and he'll be our guest speaker. Can you talk just a little bit about how you got introduced to Live Good, kind of what that process was?
Paul Richards is my sponsor in Live Good, and he and I know each other from a previous business venture, although I really wasn't involved so much in the business part of it. I was just a customer. I believe water purification, water systems, and he and I kept in contact. We met, I think, once at an event that a friend of mine dragged me to, and we met once, and then we just kind of kept in contact. I would send him, I would get these email or text messages from him on holidays. So how's it going? What you up to? You know, the last one I got was for Memorial Day. And so I said to him, you know, how you doing? Are you going to do the barbecue with family? And we had this little exchange. And of course, here I am with my horrible example of a network marketing company asking him if he would take a look. And he's so smart. He said, I will take a look if you will take a look at mine. So I said, okay, fine. To be long story short, basically, I took a look at his, which was Live Good, and never even cared if he looked at mine. And the rest is just history. Because I mean, I was one of those, like, I think it's her, the lady that's the Arizona real estate agent, where I was kind of digging for my credit card because I thought this is just too good to be true, but I'm going to sign up anyway, and I'll find out more about it later. And that's how I got involved in Live Good.
Fantastic. And I really want to point out something she mentioned, the way that Paul stayed in contact with her. Sometimes when people tell us no along the way, we delete them out. But isn't it nice that Paul stayed in contact with you, and that friendship ultimately led into this business relationship? Well, let's end it up with this, Amy. Can you share? Now, you're from out west. Tell me where you're from again.
I live in a town called Victorville, which is considered the high desert. It's about 40 minutes north of San Bernardino. You can't miss us if you're on the Highway 15 on your way to Vegas. So you do pass right through us on your way to Vegas.
Excellent. And so talk to us a little bit about what you did to get started, and then what you see in the future for you and your team.
Oh gosh, how I got started. Pretty much like everybody else, you make a list. My list was kind of short because I narrowed it down to who were the people that I felt like I had a little bit of influence over, you know, who loved me, trusted me, even though some of those people didn't follow through like I thought they would, some did. And so I was able to start and build a team pretty quick, went bronze right away, and then, you know, realized I was getting kind of close to silver. But bottom line is just do what they tell you to do. So constantly contacting people, showing them the tour, following up, finding out, you know, if there's any objections, work on that. One of the things that I'm learning to do better is the three-way call, putting them on the phone with somebody who more knowledgeable than I could answer their questions. We've come up against a lot of people who like to analyze the comp plan. So Dwayne, you've been very instrumental with that video. We've been able to share that. And then of course you're available by phone for a lot of my team. So yes, just the consistency is important. And what I see for my team is just, I want them all to succeed. I want it more for them than I want for myself, because I love the phrase, if you help enough people get what they want, then you will get what you want.
Fantastic. You know what I love best is you didn't talk about anything way out there. You talked about the basics, and you're just doing the basics, and you do them consistently. Amy, I'm really looking forward to our growth together. I enjoy talking to you. I enjoy working with you and your team. Next week, we're going to have Joe Valley on board with us, and he just made gold, and he's just going to pretty much share what he did and what he's doing, and I think it'll be a real exciting call. Well, listen, I sure appreciate it, Amy. Thank you for participating with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I'm going to